Hello everyone. So today's video I'm going to be combining JavaScript and database and just do one video. I don't have a lot to do in each topic, so I just figured I'll combine them into one. So let's get started talking about database. So right now you guys are working on your group projects. I think most of the groups seem to be making pretty good progress from what I understand with that. If you are getting stuck on something, please don't hesitate to put your database in a zip folder and send it to me on D2L with whatever the issue is, and I'll quickly take a look and get back to you and try to help you out. In addition, with the database project, please make sure you remember to send me your progress report for this week. And I hope everyone is working well as a group. If there's any issues, please let me know. Okay, and last database class, I went through the archiving process and I showed you guys how to create some queries related to archiving. One was an append query that would take whatever terminated employees there were and would basically add them to an archive table. And after that, I created 3 delete queries that would then go through and remove that employee's data from the rest of the database, so it would only be contained in the archive. Now, in that video, I only showed you how to do it using macros, which is all you need to worry about, really. But it would be interesting to also go and take a look at how this might work if you were going to use a VBA, for example, instead. So let's just go through and do that example right now here. So I'm just opening up the database that we used last time. And if I go into Design View and I select the Employee Archive, you'll notice here that I have a macro that basically runs all of the 4 queries, the append and the 3 delete queries. So it's a very, very simple macro. But just for completeness, I'd like to show you guys how you would do that, set that up using VBA. So let's just go ahead and do that. So if I want to use VBA instead, I can remove my macro, and notice I have the Employee Archive button selected. So now I'm going to select this option here and I'm going to select Code Builder. All right, so I've got my code editor, so I can write my VBA code open right here. And pretty much all I have to do now is run the 4 queries. Just instead of using a macro, I'm using VBA. So the way you do that is you use the do command .open query command. And you pass that a string which represents the actual query you want to run. So I really just need four setups here. I'm going to write do command .open query, and I pass a string which is going to be the query name. And so I can just look at my database. So the first query is query append to archive. So I've added that. And the next one is query delete dates. And the next one is delete employee. And the last one is delete employee position. Okay, so I've got all of those ready here, and so I can go ahead and test them out. Now, the only other thing that you'll notice when we run these, commands, is you'll get a bunch of warnings. And when we saw the macro example, we got hit with all kinds of warnings. Are you sure you want to? This is going to add 1 row, or this is going to delete 1 row. Are you sure you want to do this? And often you don't want all of those warnings. So I'll show you right here in VBA. You would go do command .set warnings false, okay? Now the only issue here is if I just run this and save it like this, the warnings will never come back on. So if I'm working on some VBA later on, and I actually would need to have some warnings, or it would be good to have them because maybe I've made a mistake, I won't actually get them. So anytime you turn the warnings off, you also have to go do command.set warnings true, okay? All right, and let's also show, now because we turned the warnings off, we're not gonna get any prompts. So it might be a good idea to also add a message box or some kind of pop-up. So let me just do a quick search here. So okay, so that's one of the nice things about using Access. Really easy to get information about some of the different functions. So there's a function here called message box, and we can pass it a prompt. So that's just going to be a string that's going to say, what it's going to look like. The other one is we can pass integer that represents what type of buttons we're going to get. Okay. So in our case, if we wanted just an OK button, we would pass in a value of 0. If we want a cancel button, we'd want a value of 1. If we want a yes/no prompt, we would want a value of 4. So why don't we go and we'll add a yes/no prompt, and the prompt will say, are you sure you want to archive the employees? And there's a return value that comes from this that will return an integer indicating which button the user clicked. So if they clicked no, the return value will be a 0, and we can basically check that. If they returned yes, then it will be a integer, which will be this one right here, VB yes. Okay, so we can check to see if they hit yes, and if they do, then we'll go through and we'll show them, we'll perform the archive. So let's go and try to add this as well. So I can go, let's see here. I'm gonna have to declare a variable, so I'm gonna call it dim return value as integer, and I'm going to say return value equals message box, and then my prompt can just be something simple. Are you sure you want to archive employees? Okay, and then I need to pass it the parameter which indicates what buttons will it use. So we have, it can be a cancel one, it can be an OK only. We want yes, no. Okay, so that variable there, that's a constant integer variable that represents, if I printed it, we would see that it represents the same values that it showed me here. So yes, no would actually represent a value of 4. Okay, so I've got that ready, and now, oops, no semicolon. Okay, so now I can do an if statement around my, my query command. So I'm going to say if return value equals, sorry, just one equal sign. So I'm going to use the, I want to compare it with VB yes, okay. So then inside here, I'll just indent these. And I just do an end if. And I think that's pretty much all I want. Now I could add another, potentially I could add another message box. So I'll just put a comment here, add a message box to show completion of archive. Okay. All right. So let's save this and let's try running it. Okay, I'll save my database. Okay. So let's see if I even have. I remember last time I pretty much terminated everybody. So let's see if we still have some. Okay, we have one employee left to terminate. All right, so I can go here. I can set this employee as terminated. I'll save that. I'm going to close it. And let's try running this now in form view. So I'm coming into here. I'm going to click Employee Archive. It pops up and asks me, are you sure you want to archive employees? I'm going to say yes. And let's go and check now. Did it actually archive it? Okay, that's the actual archive table. Okay, so the employee is gone. And the dates are removed as well. So it looks like that worked, and that employee has been added to the archive now. Okay, now if you wanted to use the message box or MSG box, that command, there's a very similar one called message box that works inside a macro. All right, and that can be really useful for basically showing simple message boxes or dialogues or warnings that are custom, that are ones you came up with. And just like I did here, I turned off the warnings. There's also a command in the macro that allows you to turn off and turn back on warnings, and it works basically the same way. All right, so that's pretty much all I want to do for database today. I want you guys working on your projects. When you get stuck, you can send me emails and I'll help you out. The other thing to keep in mind for database, next week I will be posting the assignment that is replacing the final exam. So be aware of that, and I'll be giving a due date, which will probably be a few days after classes end. The last day of classes is the 16th, and I'll give you a few days after that to get it done. So you should have about a week to do that assignment. All right, let's go through JavaScript now. So some news I have posted, and I've also messaged you on D2L. The final exam is going to take place Monday, April 20th from 1:30 to 4:30. The final exam is going to cover every chapter that we've done so far. So that's chapters 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. And the test is going to be comprised of 5 programming questions. So in terms of how to study for that, I've posted a study guide and some sample questions to help prepare you. So if you go to under content, final exam review, final exam topics just goes through all the major topics from the chapters that we've covered. And then we also have final review questions and some zipped exercises that we can practice with. So I recommend going through doing these questions, making sure you're able to do them. These questions pretty much cover most of the material, so there'll be a good review for you to do. And the first one is just a simple one that I made up. It doesn't actually have a starter project, but all the other ones have zipped files that you need to download and to work through with. Okay, so let's do one together here. I'm thinking let's do exercise 4 here. So this one says add JavaScript so when the user clicks the register button, all of the fields are checked for valid entries. If the fields are correct, submit the form. If the entries are not valid, replace the asterisk with an appropriate error message. If the reset button is pressed, reset the form. Include the reset of any error messages. So this is a very similar exercise to ones we've done previously, where you have a form, there's a bunch of entries in the form, and you need to do some error checking and only submit the form if the person has filled everything out. And if they haven't, you want to give an appropriate error message to them. So let's download the exercises here. Okay, so I've got exercise 4. So I'm going to come in and let's see here. I want to open this up in brackets. Okay. And right away, well, I guess I might as well preview it. Okay, so this is what our form looks like. And we have a select here, we have some radio buttons, and we also have a checkbox. and we also have text areas here. So if I hit reset or register, that's where I have to hook up my behavior with. So when I look at the actual HTML, there's no JavaScript here. So I'm gonna set up a external JavaScript file here. So I'm gonna say script source equals, I'm gonna say form handler.js. Okay, and now I have to add my form handler.js file. So I'll go file, and I'll save this as. Okay. Okay, there we go. So let's just make sure that this is hooked up properly. So I'm just going to do a window on load. And I'm just going to do a console.log. Okay, so I've added the console log here. So let's go and we will run our JavaScript, refresh this. And when I come into my console log, I see a console log of here. So I know that the JavaScript is being loaded properly. Right, so now we can begin basically adding in our code. So the first thing I'll do is I'll add the $sign function. So var $sign equals function ID, return get document.get element by ID. So there we go. And we know that we want to have two functions, or there's sort of two behaviors we need. We need one when you hit the submit button, and we need one when you hit the reset button. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the two functions right now. I'll leave them empty to start with, and then we can start filling them out. So var submit press equals function, okay, and var reset press equals function, okay. And let's see here, I can put in some console logs, so I'll put in a console log saying submit, and I'll put in one saying reset, and now I can go and hook up these two buttons here. So let's look at the HTML. So let's get the IDs of the buttons. So we have a button register, and we have one reset _ form. So I'm gonna use my $sign function, register.onClick equals submit press, and I'm gonna go $sign reset _ form dot onClick equals reset press. So now I can test these out, and I'll click the buttons and I should see console logs pop up here. So I hit register, there we go. And I hit reset, and there we go. So one of the things that I like to do when working on JavaScript, especially when I'm working with the browser, is always do things one step at a time and then have a console log. So basically if I make a mistake, then I can catch that mistake right away. The last thing you want to do is go and code for half an hour and then go and, okay, everything's ready now, let's try this out. And you guys have been there, you know what's gonna happen, right? And if you made a mistake half an hour ago, you know, it's gonna slow you down a great deal. So it's better to catch those mistakes as you go. All right, so we've got those hooked up. So what we can do now is, let's do the email. So basically we're gonna check to see that the email is, they've actually entered something. Now we could do much more complex, basically string checking or regular expression checking to see if it's a valid email, but that's not what we're worried about here. We just want to see, did they enter something in the email text box. So if I go back here, let's get the ID for the email. So I've got an input type of text, and the ID is email _address. So when I come up to submit press, I'm gonna declare a variable here. So I'm gonna say let email equal, and I'm gonna go $ email address, and it's a text box. So to get the actual text, I just need to use .value. Okay, and now I can just do a simple if statement. So if email equals the empty string, then I know that there's a problem. So I'll just do a console log once again. So console.log, no email. And just for now, I'll just do an else, just so I can see both cases. Console.log, email entered. All right, let's try that. So this is when I go register. So it's saying no email, and now I'll enter something in, email entered. Okay, so that looks like that's working properly. Now, I need to be able to go through all these variables, all these values when I'm checking the form. So I'm going to create a variable here. So I'm going to say let entries okay equal true. So if email is empty, then in this case, I want to set entries okay equals false. And instead of console logging it, now I want to go and modify the asterisk that's beside the email here on my HTML. So let's go find, we're basically going to have to write some code that's going to traverse the document object model to get to that asterisk. So when we go to our index.html, we can see here that we have a span, okay, but the span doesn't have an ID. So we can't just go and look it up by ID. Now, of course, you could add the ID, but that's going to make your HTML very, very messy, right? It's a lot easier just to write a little bit of extra JavaScript that's going to go and find that text element and modify it. So I'm going to use my ID here of email address, okay? And we know that the span element is a sibling, so we're going to use the property next element sibling. And then we know that the text element is a child of the span, so then we're going to go .first child, and then we need to actually get the value. We're going to say .node value, and that's how we can access the actual text there. So I will go $email underscore address next element sibling first child node value equals, I'm just going to make a simple message here, required entry. Okay, so I've got that, and all right, so that should modify that. Now I do have to be aware of the reset press as well. When someone presses the reset button, I want to be able to reset these values. So I can go ahead and do that as well, but let's test this out first. So I come up here, and I'm not going to enter anything, I'm going to hit register. And there we go, we get the required entry. Now if I were to go and add something, okay, there's no error, but it's not properly resetting the required entry when I set that, okay? So I need to have a way to reset the form. So in my reset function, I will go in here and I'm going to basically grab the email address and I'm going to reset that to being the empty string for the span asterisk. Actually, not the empty string, it needs to be an asterisk. And I'm also going to set the email address.value. So even if they enter something, if they hit reset, we should also remove the text, okay? And I should probably have an else here where I also reset the, okay. So let's try that out now. So I come in here and I add something to my email and I hit register, and of course I don't get an error message. If I hit reset though, it's going to clear that out, and now if I hit register, I have a problem. So if I go back in and add something, and now I go register, it resets that. as well, if I hit reset, it's also going to clear out that text entry and reset it back to the asterisk. So that's looking pretty good. So I can now move on. So I'm going to do the same thing with mobile phone. And this is the exact same. It's a text box. So the code and how I'm going to structure it is going to be identical. So I can pretty much copy what I set up already. I'm just going to get rid of this console log because I don't need it anymore. Okay. So let's just get the ID for the phone number. So the ID there is phone. And so I can come in here and I'll say, let phone equal $ phone dot value. And I'm just going to copy this and I'll just make some edits. So if phone is empty, then we know that entries okay are false. And I'm going to then go and grab the phone and say that entries are required for the span text. Otherwise, I just leave it as the asterisk. And for my reset, and I'll reset the text as well. Okay, so I can go test this out now. If I click register, okay, I'm also getting an error with the phone. And if I enter something in, I can now, it'll also reset itself. So that looks like it's working pretty good. So the next one I want to do is I'll do the country. Okay. So let's look at the HTML for that. So for country, this is a select box. And we have several different options that come with it. You'll notice here that we have an option that has a value of the empty string. So we can use that to basically check to see which option has been selected, I think. And if the value is the empty string, then we know that they haven't actually made a selection yet. Okay, and the ID for this select is country. So let's try this out. I'm going to say let country equal $ country dot value, and if country is the empty string, then we know that they haven't selected anything, and I would go entries okay equals false. And now I need to get the text. So if I look here at the select, once again, it also has the same pattern where it has a span element that is a sibling. So we can do the exact same procedure here. So instead of email address, it's going to be country. I get the next element sibling, first child node value, and I say that that is a required entry. Else, I'm going to get that and reset that back to being the asterisk. Okay. And then for resetting it, I'm going to grab the country value and I'm going to set that equal to the empty string. Oops, that's the wrong place to do that. That's the window on load. Okay, so I've got that set up. And I also need to set the error message back as well. Okay, let's try this. So we come in here, and I'm not going to select a country. It says required entry. I'll reset my form, and now I'm going to select a country, and now it picks that up and it accepts that value. All right, so next up we have the contact me, but as we see, because we're using radio buttons, it always forces us to have a valid value there. So the last element that we have to do some error checking for is going to be our terms of service. So this is a checkbox, and so we need to get this by ID, and there's a property called, I think it's called isChecked, and we need to see that that is true. And if it's not, then we have to add some error handling. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got my index.html here, and I'm looking at here's my checkbox, and the ID is terms. So I'm going to get that by ID, and okay, so let's see here. So in my submit press, I'm going to say let is checked equals $ terms dot value. And I can come down here and say, actually not dot value, sorry. It is checked. I think it is checked. Okay. So I'm going to say if not is checked, then in this case, I'm going to do my error handling, and we can see for the checkbox that once again, we also have a sibling that has the text. So I can use the same code I used before. So instead of country, the ID is terms. And I'm also going to set entries OK equal to false. All right, and else I want to set this text to the asterisk. Okay, so I've got that, and I also have to reset it as well. So I'm going to grab this text here, and I'm also going to say $ terms dot is checked equals false. Okay, so let's try this out. I don't know if the is checked is the correct property or not, but anyway, we'll soon see. We will soon see. So come in here, and I'm gonna basically say register. Okay, so it's a required entry. I'm gonna reset it, and now I'm gonna click I accept. Okay, so all right, so maybe it's checked. Let's try that. Okay, and then I just have to reset checked. Save that. All right, here we go. So I'm gonna select it. Okay, there we go. And if I unselect it, there we go. Okay, so it's checked, not is checked. Okay, so that looks like that's all set up. And the last thing I need to do is actually submit the form. So to do that, I'm going to check my variable. So if entries okay. So in other words, I didn't have any errors. Now I'm going to grab the form. So my form has an ID of registration form. So I'm going to go $ dot submit. Okay. All right, so this looks like it should work. So I'll come in here, I'll hit register. Okay, obviously it doesn't submit. So now I'll fill out my fields. And I will hit register. And there we go. Okay, it sent the form, and we basically went to the other HTML page to say that we sent the form. Okay, so that worked out pretty good. Now, keep in mind there's 4 other exercises. They're all very, very short exercises for you guys to work on, to practice for the exam. And so I guess the other things to mention with JavaScript, if you're still working on the calculator project and you're stuck on anything, please email me. You can zip up your project, send that to me. I can take a look at it, help you out. I've had a lot of success helping some of the students that have taken advantage of this, been able to point out issues they've been having and help them finish their projects. And also lab 8, I believe, is due, so please make sure you get that in as well. Okay, so I'm going to conclude the video here, and have a great day, guys. Talk to you later.